This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Family Life News anchor Sarah Harnish. We start with breaking news. There is a massive police response after a gunman entered a Catholic school in Minneapolis this morning.
It's K through 8th. They started school on Monday. This was their first day of all school mass, so they have mass once a week on Wednesdays. There have been several fatalities.
The Minneapolis Police Department says there are up to 20 people injured at Annunciation Catholic School after a man dressed in all black and armed with a rifle was reported at the scene. A police department spokesman spoke with Fox News.
I'm just looking at the faces of the kids coming out, and, it looks like, thankfully, they're not physically injured, but you can see that they are emotionally impacted by this and are going to carry these scars for a number of years going forward. So my heart goes out to the families and community as they try and deal with this tragedy.
The gunman has been killed. The scene is secure. The Family Life News team will keep you posted on this story all afternoon. Counted or canceled? Pennsylvania is at the center of a nationwide controversy on how to vote. A federal appeals court on Tuesday ruled mail-in ballots with incorrect handwritten dates in the Keystone State will count and cannot be thrown out. It's a huge win for Democrats. Adrian Fontes is the Secretary of State in Arizona.
This is unconstitutional, first, because the Constitution doesn't allow for the president to just willy-nilly take things over. Second, the states are not agents of the federal government.
But President Trump says mail-in ballots are corrupt.
You can't have an honest election with mail-in voting.
He insists watermarks and other security features on in-person paper ballots make them more reliable. Just a week ago, Governor Josh Shapiro weighed in.
Donald Trump can sign whatever executive order he wants. It will have absolutely no bearing on our elections here in Pennsylvania.
Shapiro says Trump has no proof that elections are skewed because of mail-in mishaps.
Millions of people have voted by mail, and we have had free and fair, safe and secure elections. Donald Trump has won some of those elections. He has lost some of those elections. Democrats have won some. Republicans have won some.
Opponents of mail-in voting have one avenue left, and that's taking the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, which seems likely. Cracker Barrel cracks, and Uncle Herschel is back. Late last night, the restaurant giant reversed course on their new simplified logo, bringing back Old Timer, the man next to the barrel, after fan backlash. Turning Point USA's Charlie Kirk weighed in.
It shows that when you market test in Brooklyn, you lose in Birmingham, Alabama.
The chain posted on social media, quote, "We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away." Kirk says there's a culture war going on behind the scenes.
The middle part of the country, they do not want to see their traditions and their customs and the things that they have come to love and appreciate taken from them. So much of Trump's base are former Democrats, and they became Trumplicans, if you will, Trump Republicans, because of the working class basis.
The about face followed days of protests on social media against Cracker Barrel's rebranding efforts, sending the company's stock plunging with a massive $100 million stock market loss.
The reason why they saw such a huge response is they said, no, not again. You're not going to take yet another institution, yet another restaurant, or Uncle Herschel from us. We've had enough stolen from us. That's why we want Cracker Barrel the way it should be.
President Trump weighed in yesterday saying the company got, quote, $1 billion worth of free publicity if they play their cards right. There's a major meeting at the White House today about ending the war in Gaza. The president's U.S. envoy, Steve Witkoff, says Trump will also discuss what happens the day after the war ends.
It's a very comprehensive plan we're putting together on the next day that I think many people are going to see how robust it is.
That war has been going on for nearly 2 years. In Washington, D.C., we've got the latest on the firing of a federal employee. A legal battle is now brewing after President Trump ordered the removal of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook over mortgage fraud.
We need people that are 100% above board, and it doesn't seem like she was.
Trump said he was ousting Cook because of false mortgage statements.
She seems to have had an infraction.
CBS's Ed O'Keefe says it appears what Trump is saying is true.
CBS News has obtained the mortgage documents in question, which were included in a letter the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency sent to the U.S. Attorney General. They show Cook purchased a home in Michigan in 2021 before she joined the Fed, then another in Georgia that same year, declaring both as her primary residence, allegedly, to get better mortgage rates. The Justice Department opened an investigation last week, but no formal criminal charges have been brought.
Cook says she's not leaving. In fact, she's filing legal proceedings. The president says you can't work for a federal agency that regulates mortgage rates and cheat on your own mortgage. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he'll announce by September what causes the autism epidemic. He's long said environmental factors and vaccines are behind the rising rate of autism diagnoses. And after months of explosive mishaps, the 10th time is the charm for SpaceX.
There's a splashdown.
The 10 test flight of SpaceX's Starship is deemed a success. The massive rocket lifted off from Starbase in South Texas shortly after 6:30 p.m. local time on Tuesday. As planned, about 7 minutes into the flight, Starship's Super Heavy booster splashed down in the Gulf. It's a significant and encouraging stride forward for SpaceX's Starship program, which will eventually carry humans to Mars for the first time. Still to come on the Noon Report, a wild response to blood donations in Western New York, anti-discrimination coordinators in the Empire State, and a little railroad history in Pennsylvania. Those stories after weather.
This is meteorologist Ken McKinley. For most areas, a good deal of sunshine this afternoon. Temperatures 70 or better. A bit unsettled for tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. Cooler on Friday, but a pleasant weekend ahead. Full forecast details are coming up in about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Ken. Checking the stories and making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Pints, people, and power. Western New York is representing after Friday's fatal charter bus crash on the New York State Thruway in the town of Pembroke. The company Connect Life put out an urgent all-call for blood donations.
I always think of that Mr. Rogers quote where he talks about his mom saying, in times of need, you look for the helpers. And Western New Yorkers really came through as the helpers this time.
More than 50 people were hurt in that crash. Connect Life's Zach Konecki spoke with WBEN.
We had just a flood of donors coming in on Friday. We had workers who stayed well past closing to make sure anyone who wanted to donate was able to. And we were prepared because the next day we knew it was going to be even more. So we had 124 donors on a Friday, which is much above what we usually would have. Saturday surpassed that in every way. We had 208 donors come in on Saturday. For perspective, that's about as many as we had on the previous 3 Saturdays combined. It's the second biggest Saturday we have ever seen.
Not only did it help every person that needed blood from that crash, but also restocked the supply for Western New York. Konecki says human blood has no medical substitute. The only way those crash victims survived was because of the generosity of the people of Western New York. 5 people were killed in that crash. Officials believe the driver was distracted, lost control, and overcorrected, sending the bus tumbling into a ditch. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has signed a new law requiring every college in the Empire State have an anti-discrimination coordinator. Family Life's Bob Price reports.
Yes, Sarah, these coordinators will work with students, faculty, and staff to address incidents of racial bias, anti-Semitism, or other forms of discrimination. The governor says the goal is to create a learning environment where no student has to fear for their safety while getting an education. The law directs New York's Division of Human Rights to develop training programs so colleges can enforce protections under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. Hochul calls the legislation a nation-leading step in combating hate on college campuses. Bob Price, Family Life News.
It is a push for energy choice. New York Congressman Nick Langworthy was in the town of Lancaster Tuesday to discuss the impact of the all-electrification in the Empire State.
We need to ban the bans. We need to ban the natural gas ban in New York State.
He's proposing the Energy Choice Act, a bill that would block states or local governments from restricting people from specific energy choices for their homes or their businesses.
Thanks to radical energy policies coming out of Albany, New York is in the midst of a housing nightmare.
The bill will be brought up in September when lawmakers return to Washington. New York is set to begin its all-electrification initiatives this January. Langworthy says most people don't know what's on the horizon. He warns this new law will have a drastic impact on the cost to build or buy a home and your monthly energy bill. It was a hazardous situation for some Western New York firefighters yesterday. A smoky blaze at a golf cart retailer in the Buffalo suburb of Lakeview shut down Route 20 for 2 hours as firefighters from several area companies worked cautiously to put out the flames. Erie County Hazmat was called in due to the presence of many batteries in the building, including some lithium-ion batteries. Hamburg Emergency Manager Sean Crotty.
When we fight fires in these facilities like this, a commercial building, with the potential for the lithium-ion and any kind of other hazardous materials, we have hazardous materials teams come in so that we can mitigate any kind of potential hazards. While we're fighting the fire, all those contaminants are in the smoke, so we want to make sure that we take every precaution necessary.
No injuries were reported. Summer may be drawing to a close, but concern remains over mosquito-borne illnesses in Pennsylvania. Family Life's Mark Webster has more.
Yeah, all but 5 of Pennsylvania's 67 counties have now detected the presence of West Nile virus. Among the most recent, 2 positive mosquito samples in Tioga County and 5 in Bradford County. While West Nile can be a serious illness, the good news is that state health officials say the risk of actually getting it from the bite of an infected mosquito remains low, but real enough to warrant taking some precautions, including wearing long sleeves, pants, and socks from dusk to dawn, using a DEET-based repellent, and removing standing water where mosquitoes like to breed. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
The return to college is hitting differently at some Penn State remote campuses. Several schools are on the chopping block to save cash. These Penn State Wilkes-Barre students tell WNEP.
I'm very happy that I've been able to get in right under the wire and be able to get my very last 2 years here.
I mean, it's definitely tell the impacts, but it won't affect me, but I know it'll affect other people.
It's pretty much business as usual from what I've seen. I haven't really seen any impacts yet.
The university announced over the summer that Wilkes-Barre and 6 other Commonwealth campuses are slated for closure by the spring of 2027. Today is day 8 of the Great New York State Fair in Syracuse, New York. It wraps up on Monday, Labor Day. Yesterday was Beef Day. Farmers spoke about the impact of Donald Trump's tariffs on their businesses. Reaction was mixed.
They haven't been like, holy cow, we can't overcome this.
Tariffs kind of hit a farm because we get so many supplies from Canada and we get supplies from Mexico.
Richard Ball is commissioner of the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets.
No question, it's affecting the cost of doing business for our farmers all across the state.
Beef prices hit record highs in June at $6.12 a pound. That's up nearly 12% from a year ago. And from buying beef to transporting the beef, this weekend should be a real bell ringer in Scranton, PA. The Steamtown National Historic Site is gearing up for its annual RailFest celebration. Park Superintendent Jeremy Comaz tells WBRE it's a chance to educate people on the important role railroads have played in local and national history.
It was railroading that allowed the United States to be settled as fast as we did and to move things across the country. Even to this day, railroading moves a lot of the stuff that we use every day in the United States.
Steamtown features several working steam locomotives as well as chances to ride the rails. It gets underway in Scranton on Friday. That's the news. Let's get a check of sports next with Randy Snavely.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Sarah, it was Giancarlo Stanton's night last night, and the Yankees are grateful. He drove in all 5 of New York's runs with the bases clearing double and a 2-run home run. The Bronx Bombers have now won 3 straight after their 5-1 victory over the Nats. The Mets walked it off against the Phillies on an RBI single by Brandon Nimmo in the bottom of the 9th inning. 6-5 the final. Boy, Edwin Diaz looked sharp. He came on with 1 out in the 8th inning, struck out the next 4 batters he faced, and then got the final out on a ground out, so he picked up the victory for the Amazons. The Pirates came out swinging in St. Louis, scoring 5 times in the first inning. Andrew McCutchen hit a 2-run double. Brian Reynolds an RBI double. He had another double later in the game. Henry Davis drilled a home run, and before you knew it, the Buccos were up 8-0, and they held on from there to win it 8-3. Around Major League Baseball, the Red Sox shut out Baltimore 5-0. The Guardians also won by a shutout, 3-0 over Tampa Bay. The Twins took down the Blue Jays 7-5. KC edged the White Sox 5-4. Texas beat the Angels 7-3. And in 10 innings, the A's edged the Tigers 7-6. The Braves pounded the Marlins 11-2. Milwaukee blew a 6-run lead, but then they scored the winning run on a sac fly in the 9th inning to walk it off against the D-backs 9-8. The Cubs fell to the Giants 5-2. The Dodgers doubled up the Reds 6-3. The Rockies snapped a 4-game skid with the 6-1 win over Houston. And the Padres blew an early 5-0 lead, but then came back to beat the Mariners 7-6. At the U.S. Open Tennis Championships, it was a good day for the Americans. 4 women and 1 man all advanced to the second round. That is a look at sports.
Still to come in the Noon Report, multiple people injured at a Catholic school shooting in Minneapolis. We're nearing the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and a 10-year-old finds something pretty amazing on the ground. Those stories next.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, recently, a history teacher from Littleton, Colorado, went viral for praising the way that the Incas, her favorite empire, sacrificed children. She also reprimanded white education for wrongly teaching generations of Americans that the practice was necessarily bad. No, I'm not making this up. After noting that human sacrifice was common within most ancient civilizations, the teacher then clarified that the Incan version of the practice offered victims from the upper class because they were closer to the gods. Also, the Incas drugged the children before leaving them to die of exposure on top of a mountain. Objections to the cultural practice, she continued, are primarily due to a white perspective, which focuses on the negative aspects of great civilizations while ignoring their wonderful accomplishments. Now, defending child sacrifice is, of course, the ultimate expression of cultural relativism. In this view, all cultures are equally valid, except for, of course, white cultures that judge others. To paraphrase a former colleague, in this view, there's no difference between cultures that love their neighbors and cultures that eat their neighbors. But, of course, this teacher's innovative defense of the Incas misses a few important points. First, children as young as 4 were sacrificed, even if they could consent at that age. Does that make it any less horrific? But of course, they cannot consent at that age. And the teacher fails to mention evidence of a 4 to 5-year-old child who was tied up before being buried alive. Now, to be clear, the sacrificing of children continues to be one of the most consistent features of this fallen world. Today, aborted children are the victims of our wrong ideas about sexuality and the meaning of life. Most embryos created during the process of in vitro fertilization are deemed to be excess and left to die in freezers or medical experiments. Children are taught to be confused about who they are and thus become experiments of medical sterilization and surgical mutilation, and also victims of the latest religious hysteria of adults. And that's why Christians oppose those practices. And when they do, they are in good company within church history. And if the Western world continues to detach from its Christian foundations, we should expect that even more children will be devalued and harmed in even more ways. After all, it's a consistent feature of pagan societies that children will be in danger. We should only expect the same as society repaganizes. On the other hand, it's a consistent feature of Christians within a pagan society to work desperately to protect and defend children. That remains the calling of the church today. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Glenn Sunshine. And for a version of this commentary to print out or to share online with others, go to colsoncenter.org/radio.
This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Sarah Harnish. It's time now for another check of weather.
Good afternoon. Much of the afternoon will feature a good deal of sunshine for most areas. A few lingering showers early in the afternoon over some central New York spots, but they'll be moving east out of the area as we head through the early afternoon hours. Temperatures in most areas will get to 70 or a bit better this afternoon. Fairly pleasant outdoors. A clear, cool night coming up tonight. Then tomorrow, an approaching cold front will bring some showers and thunderstorms into portions of western and central New York as well as northwestern Pennsylvania as we head through the afternoon hours. And into the evening, the activity spreading into most areas with some showers around overnight tomorrow night.
Thank you, Ken. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Sarah Harnish, and here's what's happening this Wednesday afternoon, the 27th of August. There are multiple victims after a gunman opened fire at a Catholic church and school in Minneapolis. That gunman is reportedly dead. The shooting happened at the Annunciation Catholic Church on the south side of the city. Parents are being reunited with their children. Governor Tim Walz says he's been briefed on the shooting, and he's praying for the kids and the teachers. This is a breaking news story. The Family Life News team will have more details as it develops this afternoon. Mail-in madness. Democrats scored a win in the Keystone State on Tuesday, and a unanimous 55-page decision. A 3-judge panel on a federal appeals court has ruled mail-in ballots with the wrong dates can be counted as votes. Governor Josh Shapiro predicted a win in the courts last week.
We will once again have free and fair, safe and secure elections led by Republican and Democratic clerks of elections in each of our 67 counties. People will be able to vote by mail, or people will be able to vote in person.
CBS reporter Michael Wallace breaks it down.
The battleground state has tossed thousands of ballots after voters put the wrong date on the return envelope. Many of them mistakenly wrote their birth dates or didn't write any date at all. A federal appeals court ruled it is unconstitutional for Pennsylvania to throw out those ballots. Democrats typically cast more mail-in ballots than Republicans do. Republicans at the state and federal levels are considering whether to appeal this latest ruling to the Supreme Court.
The panel said it had to weigh the state's interests in throwing out the ballots against the constitutional right to vote. They decided they were unable to justify the practice of discarding the ballots. President Trump has warned mail-in ballots opened the door to election fraud. FEMA employees that signed an open letter to Congress have been put on leave. The group is critical of cutbacks to the agency. CBS reporter Nicole Skenga.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency on Tuesday suspended more than 20 employees after those workers wrote what's called the Katrina Declaration, a letter to lawmakers in Congress warning that the Trump administration had reversed post-Hurricane Katrina progress, hampering the nation's ability to handle a major disaster.
More on Katrina. It was the storm that drowned a city. Friday marks the 20th anniversary of the superstorm. Katrina made landfall on the U.S. Gulf Coast on August 29, 2005, killing over 1,400 people. The Coast Guard rescued 33,000 people. National Geographic has made a documentary called Hurricane Katrina: Race Against Time.
I didn't want to leave because I didn't know what we was going to be coming back to.
We have a breach in the levee.
I thank Jesus to be getting right here.
New Orleans, a vibrant city, is now a ghost town. It looks like something out of a doomsday scenario.
40% of the people never returned home. Those that stayed say the levees broke, but the people did not.
In order to prevent something, you got to understand why it happened in the first place.
Hurricane Katrina caused $125 billion in damages, making it the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history. In Washington, D.C., President Trump is set to chair a major meeting at the White House today on post-war plans for Gaza. The president's U.S. envoy, Stephen Witkoff, told Fox News that war is nearly wrapped up.
We think that we're going to settle this one way or another, certainly before the end of this year.
That's not the case for the war in Ukraine. That war now directly impacting India. Goods imported into the U.S. from India are today subject to a 50% tariff. President Trump has been insisting India stop buying Russian oil while negotiations are underway. The president said it's very possible he'll order new sanctions against Russia if Vladimir Putin doesn't move soon.
There could be very big consequences, but we'll see what happens.
Persecution of Christians is increasing worldwide, but perhaps nowhere as severely as it is in the African nation of Nigeria, where Christians have been victims of constant, widespread violence at the hands of Islamic terror groups such as Fulani herdsmen and Boko Haram. Lauren Zongo with Truth Nigeria tells CBN.
It's like a daily occurrence whereby
Christians are being killed daily. Numbers of children, women killed by gunmen. These are actually terrorists.
One Nigeria-based human rights group says more than 7,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria so far this year, 35 killings per day. Republican Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey, who's traveled to many dangerous areas of Nigeria, has introduced a resolution in Congress to help stop the attacks fueled by radical Islamic groups through sanctions and other means. Cracker comeback. Cracker Barrel's doing a 180 and ditching its new logo. The restaurant icon unveiled its new logo last week that got rid of an older man leaning against a barrel. The response was mostly negative. Camping World CEO Marcus Lemonis tells Fox News,
I've made a million mistakes before, but when the customer comes out and the market comes out and says, we don't like it, you don't need to double down.
CBS's Nicole Valdez.
Cracker Barrel's all about more.
It comes nearly a week after the country restaurant introduced a new simplified logo with only the words Cracker Barrel. The move angered customers.
Now we have this minimalist logo down here that just looks so tacky.
Sunk the company's market value by nearly $100 million, upset conservative commentators.
Cracker Barrel launches their woke rebrand and the stock craters.
And President Trump, who called the rebrand a mistake on Tuesday. Later that day, Cracker Barrel said, we thank our guests for sharing your voices. We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away, and our old-timer will remain.
And just how much do you like tomatoes? They're painting the town red in eastern Spain. CBS's Deborah Rodriguez.
The 80th anniversary version of the famed Tomatina tomato fight is just wrapping up, and the streets of Buñol are paved in juicy pulp. Every year, tens of thousands of people chuck tons of overripe tomatoes at each other. Their inspiration, a food fight between some local teenagers in 1945.
This is the Noon Report on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter most to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Good to be here, Mark.
This week's topic, mental health versus spiritual health. And Chris, I think when most people think of, psychiatry, they probably eventually think the name Sigmund Freud. And I've heard popular pastors put his theories right up there with those on evolution in terms of the harm they've done. In his case, because Freud, who was an ardent atheist, divorced mental health from spiritual health, and that's a practice that long outlived him.
Two terms that we really often interchange and we shouldn't are mental health and mental illness. Today, we're going to look more in terms of spiritual health as opposed to mental health and how they intersect, and they definitely do.
Since Freud's time, more modern psychology and psychiatry seems to have come around and realized you can't really split the two apart, even if secular sources might hedge on exactly what constitutes spirituality.
I base my practice on Romans 12:2, where, the Bible says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the transformation that's referring to, our spiritual transformation, points very directly to our mind. And the mind is the seat of our beliefs and our values. Folks come into my office and say, Chris, I'm depressed, or Chris, I've got anxiety issues. And so in order to resolve those symptoms, we have to work backwards and say, well, let's look at the way you believe. Let's look at what you believe about yourself, about your place in your community, in all different ways. Because then what you're doing is you're looking for faulty patterns of thinking and belief that are ultimately leading to depression, to anxiety, to excessive or misplaced guilt and shame. And then once you can start to unravel that, start to see the transformation that is spoken of in the Bible take place.
There's really no shortage of scripture that applies to mental health.
In my practice, I don't market myself exclusively as a Christian counselor because I want to be able to come to my practice and, if at times God opens up the door for them to start to ask the bigger questions and then focus on faith, I think that's fantastic. Because I think ultimately what it does is spiritual health helps address the more core foundational questions of, the bigger questions. Why am I here? And what's my purpose? What's my identity? In our society, where we're very much focused on identity, and, we see this the time. And for example, the LGBTQ community or identity politics. We see how important it is to have an identity. But we have to remember, we as people are not the author of identity. We simply respond one way or another to the identity that we're given by God. And the more we get that wrong, the harder it's going to be to answer some of those deeper questions, those spiritual health questions, without returning to the source, to the author, to his word, to address those questions.
For sure.
So a lot of what we're seeing in our society is more of a spiritual issue, not so much a mental health issue. But secular society needs to be able to explain it somehow. So they've just expanded this realm of mental health and mental illness, but they're still missing the mark because they're not going to the source of all truth, and that is God and God's word.
Absolutely. You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. We're talking about the links between mental health and spiritual health, hopelessness. It just seems to permeate our nation today among those who lack that assurance and confidence that only can come from God's promises.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hope, again, has to be built on something that goes beyond our circumstances, beyond our physical health, and quite honestly, beyond our mental health as well. Because if you think about it, there are some very strong mental illness conditions out there that may or may not fully resolve. However, the deeper core questions of, what is out there beyond this current life, what is out there beyond my present circumstances, those can still be addressed. And our source of hope and where we can spend eternity with a loving God without fear, without pain, without suffering and death, that's where we have got to firmly plant our feet on those truths in order to have a solid basis of hope that will get us through these challenging times that we're in today.
I was just thinking of the old kids song where like the foot bone's connected to the knee bone and on and on. All this stuff, your physical, mental, spiritual health, you can't divvy it up. It's all together.
That's right. And like I said before, society is trying to find a way of doing that to separate them out. You might only have marginal improvements in somebody's mental health if they're not willing to really return to the source. I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, look, I operate from a faith perspective. I'm not going to force my beliefs on you. However, if you want to ask me any questions about faith, by all means, don't be afraid to do so. And I jokingly say to, not just my clients, but more so my friends, I say, man, the two things that most people shy away from talking about are my two favorite things, faith and politics.
True.
So I let my clients direct that. I say, I'm not going to push it on you, but if you want to talk, then you start it and you ask me and I'll talk, but I'm not going to go where I shouldn't. The reality is that the Bible is the basis of truth, and we need to be willing to bring it into our discussions.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues most important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris.
Absolutely.
Real Answers airs Wednesdays during the Noon Report or online anytime at familylife.org. Let's get one last check of weather.
Good afternoon. Much of the afternoon will feature a good deal of sunshine for most areas. A few lingering showers early in the afternoon over some central New York spots, but they'll be moving east out of the area as we head through the early afternoon hours. Temperatures in most areas will get to 70 or a bit better this afternoon. Fairly pleasant outdoors. A clear, cool night coming up tonight. Then tomorrow, an approaching cold front will bring some showers and thunderstorms into portions of western and central New York as well as northwestern Pennsylvania as we head through the afternoon hours. And into the evening, the activity spreading into most areas with some showers around overnight tomorrow night. On Friday, behind this cold front, we'll see some sun coming out. Still a few clouds in spots and maybe a shower or two. Quite a bit cooler, only in the 60s on Friday, but through the weekend, sunshine returns, and along with it, slowly warming temperatures.
Thank you, Ken. Finally at noon, finders keepers. That's not how one honest, sharp-eyed young man sees it, though. Missouri 10-year-old Cal Blank has a knack for finding things. Just ask his mom, who tells KSDK.
He has been a finder of things since he was old enough to walk.
But the biggest find of Cal's young life came in a Costco parking lot, a shiny wedding ring.
And he drops this ring in my hand, and my hand about hits the floor. This is a beautiful ring, and someone is missing this terribly.
That someone turned out to be May Pratzel, married nearly 50 years to her husband, Alan.
It was one of the most awful feelings. We kept saying, it's a thing, it's a ring, but it was more than that.
Honest Cal brought it to Costco's Lost and Found, shined, boxed, and with an honest note.
I kind of wanted to keep it because it was pretty and shiny. I hope you relax now that you have your ring back. That is exactly right. I did.
That couple marks their 50th wedding anniversary in December, and it's going to be a little better than the 49th thanks to young Cal, who likes to look down. And that's the world that we live in for Wednesday, the 27th of August. I'm Sarah Harnish, and this is Family Life News.
You've been listening to The Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.